Welcome to the next video in our series of electrical for HVAC. Now, in this video, we're going to build upon the schematics we've been doing, all line voltage refrigeration circuits at this point. Okay, but to take a look at our last circuit, what we did is we had a 120 volt control circuit or indoor portion of the system with a 240 volt condenser that composed of two CFM motors, condenser fan motors, and two compressors like you would see on a larger refrigeration system. Okay, the reason again we're going through all line voltages at this point is because we're not dealing with the idea of a transformer. Okay, we have two completely different voltage levels, all line voltage controls. So now in this case, we had 120 volts and 240 volts. We added the low pressure switch and the high pressure switch, and still all controlled with a cooling thermostat. So our next schematic is using a low pressure switch, high pressure switch. We still have two evaporator fan motors. One's a CSCR, one's a PSC. We have two condenser fan motors, CSIR, CSCR, and two compressor motors, CSCR and CSIR. Again, we have, now in this case, if you look at it, it's all line voltage. And the other difference is everything is controlled by the low pressure switch, okay? Basically everything. EFM1 and EFM2 cycle with low pressure switch. Low pressure switch controls the box temperature. So we're going to jump back over here. First of all, I'll decrease the size of this a little bit. Okay. We're going to jump back over here because I'm going to reuse part of the diagram that we used last time. Okay. Specifically, I'm going to reuse actually, we may reuse all of this diagram. So let's what I want to do is I'm going to shrink this a little bit in size and just move this okay. I'm going to just move that a little bit because what I really want is I'm going to take this diagram down here. I want that whole portion, okay? Because we're going to use this circuit and I'm going to build on this circuit. So I'm going to copy it and I'm going to paste it in over here. Okay, now we have this pasted over here. Let me just center it a little bit. Now, you'll notice the first thing we have to do is deal with a voltage issue. Okay, in our last diagram, we used two different voltage. I had 240 volts and I had 120 volts. In this diagram, I don't need the 240 and the 120. So basically what I need to do is I need to separate out that 120. Let me just fix this thermostat here real quick. Maybe. Okay. So I am going to take and I am going to remove my labels here. Okay. And I'm also going to remove, basically I'm going to remove everything including that last little relay, and I'm going to come over here and I'm going to do the same thing here. because I'm going to just combine these two. Okay. I don't need this bottom rung because I'm no longer dealing with a compressor contactor. I don't need it. Okay, and then I'm going to take this whole thing here and I'm going to basically line it up there. I'm going to move my okay, so now I have 120 volt circuit. Now the problem is at this point, once I have everything running, everything's going to run, okay? I do not have any shut-off points. I do not have anything that breaks the circuit based on the low pressure switch. Because if you remember in our last diagram, this low pressure switch was not a control. It was more safety. So in this diagram, what we're going to do is we are going to take this low pressure switch. Okay, I'm going to move it because I don't need it there anymore. I'm going to move my high pressure switch over because I really still need to have a high pressure switch. Let's go back and we're going to also move my little line for my pressure switch so we don't lose track of him. Then I'm going to shorten these because I'm no longer going to feed everything directly from line voltage, okay? I'm going to take and just shorten all of these down. And you'll see what I'm about to do in a minute. But I'm going to take my low pressure switch here. That is what's going to be feeding the rest of my diagram, okay, with power. Okay, now, because I have this all lined up, okay, so let's review what's happening here. Our low pressure switch is now set up to turn the system on and off based on box temperature. Okay, we talked about that in one of the lessons, okay? If I have an R22 system and I want a box temperature of, let's say 40 degrees, my evaporator, we want to have about 32 degrees when it's running. So it's going to be about 63 psi, 62 psi of pressure, and you can check that on your pressure temperature charts. So we set the low pressure switch at 62 psi, and we set that's the cut out. In other words, we turn it off at 62 psi, and we turn it back on at about 70 psi. So we're cycling the system based on the evaporator temperature and the low pressure. Now, when you see this normally, we would not be cycling the evaporator fans on and off in reality. But in this case, we said that the evaporator fans cycle on the low pressure switch, which controls box temperature. You'll note that there's no thermostat in the circuit. So the sequence of operation is we turn the breaker on, and as long as the pressure of the refrigerant in the evaporator is over the set point of the low pressure switch, the low pressure switch will come on, okay, and allow the entire system to run. When the low pressure switch, when the evaporator shuts off, or the low pressure switch, the pressure drops below the point of the low pressure switch, it's going to open. In other words, our evaporator is going to be based on the refrigerant pressures in the evaporator, or our operation is going to be based on that. So again, the diagram is just a little bit different. Let me check my motor types here. Okay, PSCR, we need to do some fix here. Okay, I need to get another motor up here because that's supposed to be a CSCR, not a split phase. So let's go ahead and, we're just going to go ahead and put a start gap in. starting a run cap in there. So if I take my start cap, just copy my start cap from down there, grab it, put it up there. Make it a little bit bigger so it fits in there properly. Okay, I need a run cap as well, so let's go ahead and we're going to grab a run cap. Okay, there's my CSCR motor for evaporator 1. Evaporator 2 should be a PSC, and it is. CFM1 is a CSIR, it is. CSCR on 2, compressor 1, CSIR, compressor 2, CSCR. High pressure switch still is the safety for the compressors. So this is our complete diagram for our diagram 10.